Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the story of Bad Religion. We are so excited and grateful that our bookstore can continue to bring authors and their works to our community during this uncertain time. For regular updates on upcoming events, please feel free to subscribe to our email and newsletter. This evening's virtual event will end with a Q&A. To submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on that list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, please click the like button, and we will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Also, please consider supporting our bookstore, Book Soup, and Bad Religion by purchasing a copy of today's featured book. Just click the green purchase button directly below the viewer screen. The link will redirect to our website where you can continue your checkout process. We are selling digital audiobooks and ebooks through Libro.fm and Kobo for those who are interested. And I can't stress enough how much your support means to us during this time, so please consider making a purchase if you can. And now a few words about our featured guests. Bad Religion formed in Los Angeles in 1980 and ranks among the most influential punk bands of all time. Through their years, the band has steadfastly advocated for humanism, reason, and individualism. They have released 17 studio albums and sold over 5 million copies worldwide. The band is Greg Graffin, the singer and co-songwriter of Bad Religion. Graffin obtained his PhD in zoology at Cornell University and has lectured courses at both UCLA and at Cornell University. Graffin has also released 3 solo albums of his music. Brett Gurwitz, founding guitar player and co-songwriter for Bad Religion, as well as an accomplished music producer. He is also the owner and operator of Epitaph Records, the home of Bad Religion. Jay Bentley, bass player and founding member of Bad Religion, has also occupied the role of manager for many years. Jay has played bass with Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, TSOL, and Wasted Youth. Jay recently declined an offer to portray Lemmy Kilmister in the story of Motorhead, the biopic. Brian Baker has played guitar with Bad Religion for the last 26 years. Brian is a founding member of the iconic punk band Minor Threat. Brian has also played with Epitaph Records, recording artist Fake Names, as well as the hardcore band Beach Rats. And Jim Ruland is the co-author of Do What You Want, the story of Bad Religion. Jim has been writing for punk fanzines Razorcake and Flipside since the early 90s. He's also the co-author of My Damage, the Keith Morris autobiography. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to Jim Ruland and Bad Religion. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Dan, for that lovely introduction. Thank you, Book Soup, for hosting this event. I've been to a lot of readings at Book Soup, but it's a great indie bookstore in Los Angeles. I hope that you all support it tonight by mashing that green button at the bottom of the screen and buying extra copies of Do What You Want for your friends, family, and enemies. So I wanted to say a few words before we get started about who I am and how did I get this tremendous opportunity to pair up with Bad Religion to write Do What You Want. Well, it started around 2017 when I got a call from Rick Marino, who is the touring manager for Bad Religion. And he had been asking around about finding people to team up with to write the book. And it just so happened that Keith's book, My Damage, had been out. And so a lot of people recommended my name to him. And so that's how that got started. I met with all of the members of the band individually. I met with Brian first in Washington, D.C., appropriately enough.
DC.
Yeah. And then Rick accompanied me on the other meetings. And we drank a lot of coffee and talked about things. And the next thing I knew, I was at the San Diego House of Blues with Jay and Brian, interviewing them before the show and working on a book proposal for Do What You Want. And that started many, many, many hours of interviews with these gentlemen, with the other members of Bad Religion, people who used to be in Bad Religion or associated with Bad Religion or thought about Bad Religion, had good thoughts. So I think at the end, I had something like over 250,000 words of interviews transcribed, which to put in some perspective, there's about 80 to 85,000 words in the book. So we did a lot of interviews. And that was one of my favorite parts of writing the book because it took me literally all over the world. I was in Mexico City. I got to tour the punk archive at Cornell University with Greg. And I would just communicate. I never went on tour with the band, but I would communicate with Rick, the tour manager, and then just kind of pop up and surprise people and say, hey, I'm here. And they'd be like, oh, great, fantastic, just what we wanted. And I also got to spend a lot of time with Brett at Epitaph headquarters, and we would go in a conference room and talk for an hour or so. And the culmination of all that was do what you want. The last thing was when the band got together to record Age of Unreason, which was like hitting the gold mine because everybody was together at the same time, and but not everybody can do something at the same time. So that brings us up to now, and I thought we'd start up with a question from the audience, and it's actually a question from one of the people that runs the Bad Religion page. And if you don't know about the Bad Religion page, you should, because it's a great resource for all things Bad Religion. And the question has to do with after Mike Dimkit joined
I'm
the
going to
band.
cut you off just for a second.
Yeah.
Because I just want to say hello to all of our fans who've been waiting so long to see us. And this is actually an opportunity before we get to the questions, just to tell them how much we miss them all and to thank them all for coming to this event and for, hopefully not losing faith in us. And I just, on behalf of the other guys, want to say thanks so much for being there. We really, really appreciate it.
I'm gonna go with Greg on that. Thank you very much.
And I am watching all the scroll on the right. So if you see me laughing, it's because I appreciate some funny commentary. And
Okay.
Thanks for all the kisses and hearts and things. But
So back to our question. When Mike Dimkit joined the band, it seemed to have a positive influence on the physical fitness of everyone in the band. Mike being a ultra marathoner and an endurance athlete. Is this true? Because you all look like you're in remarkably good shape.
Well, we're not. We're just pretending to be. We're playing that on TV, Jim. But I think what Mike brought to the band is that he was he put me on to cycling. I had never been a cyclist before, and he's a guy who will ride 60 miles before sound check, which I never really reached that level, but it just got me interested in being alive longer, and I've been riding a bike ever since. And it's just it seems to be it's not like it's a plan; it's just what it is. And what a sense of style the man has too. I mean, come on.
Sartorial
presence is.
listen, we love Mike and everything he's brought to the band, but let's point out one thing. Before he was in the band, for at least a year and a half, Brett was obsessed with cycling. Okay. I remember Brett was really into bicycling, and then Mike joined, and I think those two hit it off because Mike was a cyclist and a fitness buff. But I got to give I have to say, at least Brett was not influenced by the cycling because he was already a cyclist. How's that going these days, Brett?
Well, I'm not riding a bike anymore, but I'm staying reasonably fit. How's your fitness routine going, Greg?
It's pretty good. I'm using rocks, as you know. I don't, they closed the gyms in March, and it's a true story. I live on a property with a lot of river rocks, and I use.
Well, it's very old school to use rocks.
It is. It's Devonian slate, and it's really dense stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
It's going great.
Yeah, in my early days during the Bronze Age, we used to use rocks for resistance training.
Hey, those guys were tough, man. You got to admit. Life expectancy was like 43 years old back then, too. So they had to-
Well, I'm going to hijack this conversation before we start talking about tractors and plows. Greg, you have how have you been juggling this time during the pandemic, your summer vacation?
Yeah, well, for me, there's never really a vacation. There's touring, and then there's writing, and then there's creativity time. And this summer, I just finished teaching summer school at Cornell. It was remote, online, an interesting experience. Some people may be commenting on my camera setup, but that's all just because I had to lecture this summer, and I kind of got good at it. It's easier than you might think, but lecturing was a little bit, it's a little sad. I like meeting people. It's like, I like being there in the Socratic style of discourse, with people, and doing it remotely was a bit of a shock to the system, but things have been okay. Luckily, nobody that is our family. I think I can speak for the guys too, because we've kept in touch about extended family, and everyone's doing well through the crisis. So I can report that we're very fortunate.
Right on. Jay, what's been the biggest change for you since the beginning of the pandemic?
I haven't left my house. We've been on. I think we've toured every year since 1992. Greg, right? 92? Is that when we started?
No, 89.
No, but I mean really touring every year. 89, I guess that'd be right. That's when we went to Europe the first time. So this is the first year that I can remember where we just haven't played a note, haven't traveled. That's other than watching the world kind of burn, that's been a big change.
Yeah.
Ryan, how has the quarantine affected your creativity? Have you picked up any new hobbies?
Well, when it started, it was all, well, I'm going to learn to speak French. I'm going to reread the Iliad. I'm in the original. I had all of these plans, and I was very active for maybe the first couple of weeks, writing music and just generally trying to keep myself busy. And then I sort of hit a wall, and since then I've done basically nothing. I don't really leave my house unless I have to. And I'm kind of, I'm Twitter obsessed like everybody else. And I'm mad a lot when I'm awake. And then I'll eat something that tastes good, and then I'll be okay for an hour or two. And then I'll be mad again. Then I'll go to bed. But in general, I'm trying to keep spirits up, and I don't want to sound totally morose. I mean, I realize that, it could be I could be in a much worse situation, and nobody's sick around me. And so our little quarantine bubble is still unpierced.
Very good. And Brett, what are some of the changes and challenges you face both personally, but also for Epitaph, since the whole music industry is shut down?
Right. Yeah. So the big challenge is both keeping the family happy and healthy, because I have 4 children, but 2 that live with me who are young children. And then also figuring out, so with them it's schooling, and they're the age where they're learning reading and mathematics. So helping them with that stuff and housework, and then at the same time trying to figure out how to work remotely, because I don't only have Epitaph. I have Epitaph Records and Anti and Hellcat, and then I have Kings Road Merch and Mothership Music Publishing, and Black Mask Comics. And so
That's a lot.
The answer is I'm about 10 times more busy than I ever was, and I have to take a 2-hour break in the middle of the day where I'm really doing a lot of homeschooling and tutoring, and And I guess the big surprise is how much dog hair is invisibly in my house, because it just seems like all I ever do on top of everything else is vacuuming.
So musicians have a famously love-hate relationship with touring. Brian, do you miss being out on the road and with the bandmates and crew, or are there things that you don't miss at all?
No, I miss every second. I miss the bad things. I miss the good things. I've defined my life by touring for the last 25 years. So I really miss the people that I work with every day. And, our crew guys aren't just crew people. I mean, these are really dear friends, and we communicate, as well as we can. But yes, it's really empty. And I conveniently don't remember any of the bad things. I mean, I actually was talking to someone the other day and was saying, I would just like to be stranded in an airport for 4 hours. I would just like to go miss a plane, just that alone. And then that would be fun. That would be great. But sadly, that hasn't come up. There's nowhere to go, Jim.
Yeah, I found myself remembering, like, if I never set foot in an airport again, I'll be happy. And I'm like, oh my God, I caused this pandemic. I never should have said that.
Thanks. I don't think it was just you. I think
You take it back.
So, Greg, you have spent your 40 years perfecting the perfect way for you to be out on the road. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's not really perfect. It's rather imperfect. Some people might call it insanity, but I kind of maybe 25 years ago was going insane, being on a tour bus all the time. So, I think it's not a judgment call. It's just we sort of, as a band, evolved to understand one another and realize that different people in the band had different coping mechanisms, and eventually they worked themselves out. But my coping mechanism was to get away from the production, get away from the venue, get away from sort of the routine of every day, in order to make it seem fresh when we were going on stage. So because of that, I started traveling separately and showing up. I stopped going to sound check because we had been in these venues before, and our crew is so great that they know exactly what we need. And, I started trusting them to get it right so that when I showed up, I could hit the stage and everything would be perfect. And, it allowed me to get away from it and clear my head each day and have a sort of normal routine for myself, which was wake up in the morning and, have a meal and then think about getting to the venue in time. And sometimes it was 500 miles away from where I woke up. So it was almost like a daily commute for me during the day. Whereas the production and the band, they go on the tour bus overnight, and so for them, they're already there in the morning setting up the show. And I guess, I do get some perks for being a singer because I don't have a lot of equipment. I don't have to tune guitars or worry about the things that the guys have to worry about. But so I started to feel like kind of a secret agent, man. I'd be in communication with the tour manager, and they'd say what time we're on, and I'd hit the stage when I had to be there.
Greg, the amount of pizza that you've missed at all hours of the night, all shapes, sizes, flavors, pineapple, no pineapple, you've missed global pizza experiences that you're never going to be able to have. I just want you to know the sacrifice that you're making.
I know I might, but as Brian will testify, and Jay too, that there are times that I, even today, join them for an overnight excursion.
It's very exciting when he comes.
Yeah. In fact, not so long ago, I even went to a military Army surplus store, and I bought a Navy outfit. and I wore the sailor's outfit when it was time to do the overnighter because it was like living on a submarine, you see.
Right. Well, as a Navy veteran, I can vouch for that. When those red lights come on at night, it does feel like you're on the ship. And one of the funny experiences that I had that I've shared with you before, Greg, is that there were times in Europe when I would be with the band and get to a venue early, and because you were still en route, I get off the bus with the rest of the guys, and people in Europe who are not used to seeing Bad Religion would assume that I was you. And it happened so frequently that like that one restaurant, Jay was like, made me get up and take pictures with the band and impersonate you. And it got to be kind
You
of
look better
fun.
than me. You should do that. You actually look a lot like me in my prime almost. So you should.
I never
I
knew Greg.
definitely encourage you to do that.
I never knew Greg Graffin was sleeved in traditional tattoos, but yet here he is.
Right. That's the strange part, but that's why it like works in. It happened in Europe and not in Southern California, where you're already legendary.
Yeah.
But do you recall a time there was? I understand your idea of like wanting to keep it fresh and keep it new, because there was a time in Italy where I met up with you and I thought we were just going to have a cup of coffee, and you started quizzing me about the places in Rome that I'd been to and hadn't been, and you were very disappointed that I hadn't seen as many of the sites, and off we went to the Vatican.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and didn't I introduce you to some other fantastic culture in a rare book room somewhere in upstate New York?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim's referring to our trip to the Vatican. We got a backstage tour of the Vatican. Didn't get into the library though. That's where we wanted to get, but we couldn't do that.
Right.
Somehow,
Maybe it was the logo. Maybe that's why you can get in.
Yeah, I know, but I love going to those kind of places, and Jim was, I think, blown away, I could say, when we went to the rare book room at Cornell, and there was one of two copies of his favorite novelist and his handwritten notes, James Joyce. I'm outing you here, so forgive me, but one of the, I think you probably have much more memory of it because it's so meaningful to you. But James Joyce's Ulysses, I think it was one of two copies with his handwritten notes on it. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, he had his notebooks there.
Yeah.
Before we put everybody in the audience to sleep with our James Joyce stuff, let me ask Jay. One of the things I witnessed that was really astonishing to me is the care that went into putting the set list together, not just at the beginning of a tour or for a special event, but every single night. Can you talk about that process?
Well, there is in the beginning of a tour, you have an idea. Obviously, if you have a new record, you've got material that you want to play off of that record. There's always going to be somewhere between 6 and 10 to a dozen songs that you don't have to, but you should play nightly. And if we're running between 28 and 32 songs, depending on whether they're from Process of Belief forward and maybe a little longer, or No Control stuff that's maybe 2 minutes, that changes the number of songs. Greg and I talk about that a lot. And then I'll go back and you talked about the BR page. I'll go back to the BR page because there's a pretty extensive set list selection of live shows that we've played. And if we're in a city, if we're in Pittsburgh or whatever, I'll go back and look at what did we play last time we were here. Because I think we always try to put in 5 or 10 sort of, classic deep cuts that would give someone who maybe saw us 2 years ago a different show, because that means something to me. I know that we've all been to shows of bands that just play the same show over and over again. And if you're a big fan, that's fine. Greg will remember that we went to go see, and Brian was there, we went to go see a band that we really liked in the 80s, a good hardcore punk rock band. And we were excited to go there. It was rare. We had a day off on a tour. We went to go see this band, and they didn't play any songs that we knew. And we left there thinking that was a really good lesson of like, you never forget how you got where you are. And there are songs that people really want to hear. It's nostalgic. It's about caring what people want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Can Never mind. Nothing. I'm just fucking around. We don't need to ask a practical question. Will we be playing American Jesus tonight? We don't need to ask that question.
One night. Conan.
Yeah.
Goes to 11.
Level
So I want to switch over to some questions about the Bad Religion's legacy and some of the things that we set out to do in the book. And Brett, I wanted to ask you because of your role at Epitaph and these other labels, that you interact with a broader spectrum of people across the music industry. And what's the biggest misconception that people have about Bad Religion?
Huh.
And you bristle at the label of being like old punks. Do you feel like
Okay, yeah. So no, I don't mind being thought of as old punks, because we're one of the longest running punk bands in the world. We started 40 years ago. You can't really celebrate your 40th anniversary and get mad if people think that you're old punks. And I'm not sure what the biggest misconception. I guess one of the big misconceptions is that Mike Dimkich is me.
yeah,
A lot of people think Mike Dimkich is really me, and so that's one of the big misconceptions. Sorry, that was a joke answer.
You don't have to apologize for comedy. That's
It's hard to answer that.
Never apologize for comedy, people.
yes.
I don't really know what people think of us. You know what I mean? I will say that I was shocked after releasing the last album to find that some of our newer fans didn't understand our political worldview. People.
oh, right.
I was shocked to find out that many of our fans were surprised that we were political. They said things like, "Oh, I can't believe Bad Religion is getting political like Green Day," and I said, "What the hell?" So I don't know. I mean, but I guess those are just not real fans. Those were just the sort of casual fans. So I think our real fans know us pretty well because we've been communicating with them through our music and our words for so long.
Absolutely. And Bad Religion fans are intensely loyal because, and I've talked with many of you about this, about the work that they have to put into the songs and the lyrics to sometimes understand new words, sometimes understand those words in English because they're reading them in Spanish or they're from Italy or Spain or someplace like that. Greg, I want to ask you a question about the legacy of Bad Religion, which is still being written. But one thing that the book sets out to do is to kind of fill in the gaps between 1982 and 1992. And if I could have your thoughts on that.
Well, that's an answer that I've been giving a lot because, but it wasn't, as you will testify, it's not what we set out to do.
Right.
But we did realize in our early discussions about the book that there's so many punk histories that have been written, particularly in the last 10 years. And so many of them have the same old story where punk was dead by 1983 and then Nirvana happened. And people who have been there all along sort of went, wait a minute, what was going on from 83 to 93? There's a decade there that was conveniently glossed over. And of course, halfway in the middle of that decade was we released Suffer. And so, I think that was a momentous occasion. But of course, as all the guys in the band have testified, we didn't feel like it was momentous at the time. But so many people, particularly in the last 10 years when these histories have been written, sort of ignored it entirely. And it's been documented, well documented as an influential album. So, and it wasn't just Suffer. I mean, we did No Control, then Generator. We did Against the Grain in that time. I mean, right? We did a number of, and that decade was like, we did some pretty, and of course, Epitaph, became a serious entity during that time. And it's just, it was crazy that our story hadn't been told. So, the guy, we continue to tell that story, but because we still feel like there's a lot to accomplish.
Still being written. But I think with a lot of books is that there's an emphasis on the distant past, because people are really drawn to the stories of struggle, and there's certainly plenty of struggle in the Bad Religion story, which made it so fascinating to dig in and talk to you about. But in the very beginning, it was a struggle just to learn your gear and handle the equipment and learn your way around the scene. There's one great story you have, Jay, about the time that you painted your bass guitar. Do you want to share that with us?
Well, I mean, that's as a person who doesn't really understand the sonic differences between a painted and unpainted guitar, this was a visual factor. So much like having short hair or boots and bandanas and chains, oh my, painting the guitar was just a visual reference to what I would prefer. I didn't realize that it made the guitar sound terrible. I remember like Brett knew more than I did about guitars, but Brett was learning too, and so he would show up one day with a little compressor. Remember the orange squeezer box that you could plug into your guitar?
Yeah, orange squeezer. Yeah,
and it made my bass sound great. And so Brett had a Music Man combo that he had taken the head out of, and it had 410 little speakers and an open back, and he wasn't using it anymore. And I was using that for bass, which is completely against the rules. You can't use an open back 410 for bass, but I did because it made noise. So we were all learning how to sound like a band, and maybe that was the effort that we put into it. It was that we just didn't want to sound bad, even though we did, because that was the gear we had. We tried to be better. None of us were Brian Baker.
Hey, I'm right here. Did you paint the strings of the bass at the same time? Is that what we're getting at? Who else did that? Jerry.
Time out.
Only.
Bass strings don't break. I mean, I break them occasionally now, but they don't break. And you think, well, they're not broken. Why should I replace them?
I'm just saying you're not alone. There are other bassists of note who have painted their own strings as well with varying results.
I don't believe that. Really?
Yeah, Jerry, for sure. early Jerry only. I touched the bass. I held it in my hands. He'll tell you. He's a sweet guy.
So Brian, it's sometimes in the stories it seems like you were born a guitar prodigy, that you were born with a guitar in your hand, and in fact, when you were still a
possible, Jim. Do you know anything about how babies are made?
Well, hey, even when you were a teenager, you had like a moment in the spotlight, did you not?
You're referring to the Santana story. Yes. When I was, I actually did some research. The story was that when I was 12, I played a show with Santana. It turns out that I was actually 14. I did some research to find out exactly what was true. But I had just turned 14. I was in a middle school cover band. The drummer's father owned a restaurant in Detroit, was where I was living at that time. That was a favorite of the Santana band and crew. One thing led to another. Free passes, backstage passes were proffered. I went to the show, 4'11", and I walked into a guitar tuning room, and not understanding protocol, being a punisher, if you will, I started picking up a guitar and playing it. And, some roadie saw that. And the next thing I know, pretty much, well, it wasn't the next thing. I watched the concert. And then for the encore, someone was putting a guitar on me. And they basically just pushed me out on stage at Cobo Hall to play the encore with Santana. And all these years, I thought it was like Black Magic Woman or Open Invitation. But actually, I looked at the set list from that night just the other day, and it was something I've never heard of. So I just jammed along the best I could. And there's photographic evidence. So, there it is. That was it. That was the first live concert performance. First concert I attended and the first one that I played.
Outstanding. Now, one of the things that I've learned from talking to fans about this book, and also please hit that green button, buy a copy of Do What You Want, and support Book Soup and indie bookstores. But talking to fans, I discovered that there are way more fans of Into the Unknown than I ever could have imagined. And they're not ironic fans, but very sincere fans of Into the Unknown. Greg, can you talk about, you told me fairly early on in one of our meetings about how that you were less embarrassed than other people in the band by that project. And so you have a song there that you still really enjoy?
Come on, man. Saying I was less embarrassed by it, I was like, yeah. I mean, I have very few filters. That's true. As a 16-year-old, I had even fewer filters. So Brett and I thought, hey, this is cool, man. We got a synthesizer. We got some cool riffs from that Pink Floyd album.
Look, here's basically what happened. He said to us getting a keyboard because he wanted us to sound like TSOL Beneath the Shadows. But when you give a keyboard to Greg Graffin, you get Jethro Tull. Basically, that's what happened. And we used to be embarrassed about it. Now we're not. So there you go.
And the truth is, I got to be honest with you here, and I'm going to call out the guy who's right above me. Because, yeah, that's you, Jay. Because he's the one who said, you guys, I really think we got to play something off that album on the next set list. So any of you fans who saw us last year,
hey, I was in the audience.
You got to see the Dichotomy played live, and
the Dichotomy sounded good live.
It did, right?
I was in the audience. It sounded good.
I wasn't wrong on that call. That's a good song. That's a good song.
Yeah, there's like a 30-minute guitar solo there too, which is, obviously, I enjoy that.
Basically,
that goes back to just kind of like you're paying attention and doing something that people who are real fans of the band would say that was a stellar performance in a song that I've never heard before in 40 years and will probably never hear again.
Well, hey, wait a minute.
You never know.
Songs got to go. They got to go. Got to go. Bye.
You would have said that, but 20 years ago, you would have said we're never playing anything off that album.
You're right. You're right. I think it might have been sort of, we had a conversation about songs that were off the table, and all of a sudden it was like no songs are off the table, and it was like, but that was just overwhelming. All of a sudden there's 400 and something odd songs to choose from. It's fun to go and look at those and go, what can we do? What can we play? And because the other part of it is I think that we're a good band, and we can play these songs and deliver them the way they should be delivered with honesty and respect. And like Brett said, when we played that, he heard that and said that was really good. He would have been the first one to say like, yeah, don't do that ever again.
Yeah, but I had so much fun playing it that that's testimony to the fact. And I went on record saying I've never really been embarrassed by it. It was any more than you can say. It was an experiment of youth. I think we all learned a valuable lesson, and I think we'll be playing I really think we should bust out Time and Disregard on the next tour. That's my 2 cents right
Well,
there.
Next tour will be virtual, so that will be easy to do. We can do the entire thing,
Let's try it.
keyboard and strings.
Okay.
Who will play the synthesizer?
Greg. Yeah, Greg has to play it, of course. There's no other way.
Two of them, so we can play one on either side.
Viv Savage.
Very vivid.
So Brett, we talked about how the fan base expanded worldwide, and that you started to slowly come to an awareness that, like, hey, we have fans outside of Los Angeles by the fan mail that you started to get. Can you talk about some of that fan mail that you would get from all over the world and your awareness that you had a fan base there?
Sure, yeah, but the truth is, it wasn't that I was aware that had a fan base that was expanding. I didn't even know the expression fan base. I was a high school burnout living with my parents. We had a PO box on Ventura Boulevard, but we were getting fan mail from like Italy and Switzerland and Croatia and Netherlands and I couldn't fathom that we were actually getting popular in Europe from this record that I used to drive around and leave on consignment at Zed's Records. So my assumption was that people in Europe were avid letter writers. That's what I thought. I didn't think we were making a name for ourselves in Europe. I thought, man, European kids writing letters must really be popular. I didn't find out that we were, when we truly discovered we were huge over there, it was as much as, which was, I think was it the Suffer No Control tour when we went over there for the first time? It was as big of a surprise for me as everybody else. And that was sort of like, that was the true wake up call. And that was like, we were suddenly 1,000 times bigger than we ever imagined, when that happened.
Right on. Well, in a couple of minutes, we're going to open it up to some fan questions. I will select from the Ask a Question bucket. So if you have one, put one there. And since we're on the subject of fans, Brian, I'd like if you could tell everyone here, what is the difference between a fan and a punisher? And how can you avoid being one?
Well, it's easy. Fans are never punishers. Punishers are on the guest list, Jim. That's where they come from. And they're often in bands or they're friends of people in bands. And that's what they do. The fans are awesome. And it's just people who don't really get that when I'm at the rock concert, I'm working. I'm either preparing to do something for an hour and a half that is relatively complicated and perhaps strenuous for a man my age, or I've just done it. And so now it's time to maybe relax. And since Greg's not on the bus, I've got it all to myself, have some pizza, text. So any kind of like negative talkiness coming in at me can sometimes be defined as punishment. A lot of friends that good friends of mine who are in other bands, this is sort of a universal understanding that it's I'm really glad that you got in for free and you're standing here drinking all of the crew's beer. And I'm glad you want to share with me what it is that you do and how you feel about things, unprovoked or asked. But I'm gonna go talk to my wife if that's cool. It's just like
wait. So, are you telling me that when you're like in a bathrobe and flip flops and going to take a shower, that's not a good time for me to ask you about Minor Threat?
Well, no. That actually is a good time for you to ask me because there's no barriers between us, Jim. I mean, that was anytime's good. Anytime's good.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the Ask a Question bucket and see what we've got here. Okay, we've got one that a lot of people really want to know about songs that are your favorite to play or that you're most proud of contributing to. So why don't we start with you, Jay?
The dichotomy.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun to play because I didn't have to sing. Half the song is a goddamn guitar solo. Jeez.
Greg, so what are some of your favorite to play or favorite that you?
Well, first of all, I want to say, people often ask, like, what song are you most proud of? And pride, is not really. I think there's artistic satisfaction that comes. I feel extremely satisfied, but I can't really say that any song I'm more proud of than another. I feel satisfaction when the audience is moved by a song. And so if I was, I've had a lot of misses and a lot of, those are the songs that I thought were great, but it didn't really resonate. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge as an artist. You want to be true to yourself. That's part of the craft, but it's how the audience responds. And so even though it's a song we played 1 million times, if the audience goes crazy for 21st Century Digital Boy, it's like one of the most satisfying experiences that we do. And so it's almost an impossible question to answer. But I would say that, those big classic Bad Religion songs, they get such a wonderful response that we want to play them every single night.
When I went out to visit you, Greg, when you were still composing songs for Age of Unreason, and you played a couple for me when you swore me to secrecy and made sure I had all my devices in a secure location. And but yeah, you told me that you had written about 30 songs that hadn't made the cut, and I was really impressed by just like the industry that went into the writing of the songs, and never mind the back and forth between you and Brett. So let's kick it over to you, Brett. What are some of your favorite songs that you've written or enjoy playing?
Well, my favorite ones to play are some of the ones that are just sort of. This is going to sound funny, but are the ones that are easy to play. because I don't think about it. So like Greg wrote a song called Faith in God, right? It's just a fast punk song, but it's really fun to play, And I've always loved playing Sanity. That's a fun one to play. It just sort of chugs along. And I'm not a real technician on my instrument. So, songs that just let me, feel music and not think about my fingers are the ones I generally have more fun with. And then, some of the songs I'm more proud of are a lot of times it's to do with the feeling, and the meaning behind them. So, Sorrow has a lot of meaning for me, and I think it's my best song personally. So I'm proud of that. I also am proud of the song Stranger Than Fiction. Looks like we lost Brian. And I don't know. I mean, I like New Dark Ages too. Anytime you can rhyme immaculate with ejaculate, it's so a good rhyme makes me like a song.
Outstanding. So another question that we've got. I'm sorry, there was a few people who asked that one. I didn't say who the question was from. I'll try to get that right this time. Okay, so Heather wants to know what are some of the bands from the 80s and 90s that were your favorite to tour with?
Wow.
And Jay, you want to kick that one off? Jay, you like everybody, so
I like everybody. We toured with the Super Suckers and Pearl Jam. We toured with NoFX and Pennywise. I mean, I don't think there was ever a band we didn't like touring with. I mean, no, there was a couple bands that we kind of maybe didn't see eye to eye with, but whatever, we got over it. And there were some bands that were they struggled more in front of our fans than others. Promise Ring comes to mind. They had a hard time in front of our fans. But I always remember talking to them and just saying, look, play your songs and eventually people will change their mind. But if you provoke people because you're upset, they'll just stay upset. That's why I keep saying things like, stop throwing quarters at me from stage. So I get more quarters.
Greg, you want
Yeah, I
to?
think going on tour with those bands, particularly the Epitaph bands that we had so much fun with, there was just a lot of camaraderie. And even to this day, we usually take out a band, younger bands that are getting started. Hey, he's back.
Boy, you don't want to know where I've been.
All right. Let's just stop talking right there.
Thanks
He's back.
you.
Okay. But just to finish with Heather's question, a lot of people don't realize that there is a lot of camaraderie, and it's important when you choose a band to go on tour with, or as we've been chosen by other bands, that there's a genuine feeling of camaraderie and friendship. And we've been very fortunate with our opening bands and to open for some of the bands that we've opened for.
So, Greg, that's the sign of a skilled professor, that you bring the name of the person who asked the question back into it. That's really good. Brian, how about you? Some of your favorite bands to tour with in the 80s and 90s?
Well, Super Suckers. I mean, I could hear you guys when I was on my journey. Super Suckers for sure. Really good friends. SNFU. I love playing with them. I really can't think of any bands that we toured with that I didn't have a great time with, but that was kind of why we would take them. Like, you kind of get a good feeling about a group. And, we weren't really, even when we were on Atlantic, there wasn't a lot of, you have to take out, this band that's completely wrong. It was always I love being around a lot of musicians. So I can't really, I don't really remember a really bad experience.
Okay, so Marcus Simon would like to know about the songs that you guys have never played live. Do you guys maintain a list? Is there a secret database where you keep track of that, or are you just as shocked to learn that you've never played
Jay's
one
brain.
song?
Yeah. Jay's the band historian, and he knows every song we've played in every city. So you better ask him.
Yeah, you have to come up with song titles, because just because we never played it in your city doesn't mean that we've never played it.
Okay,
Right.
well, how about Walk Away? Have you played Walk Away?
Yes.
Okay, the other one that was mentioned was Into the To Another Abyss.
Sure. We played that. Yeah, we have.
I don't know if we've played it on stage, Brian. I know we've played it in rehearsal. We've played it at soundcheck.
No, we've played it on stage because I know how to play it too well.
Well,
Like, I can play it right now. That means I had to learn it for a reason.
Greg, do you remember singing that?
I'm fuzzy on a lot of details. I used to drink a lot.
I suggested it. So
I know we know it. But I don't know if we've ever actually.
I probably played it. I really did.
Okay, we played it.
Brian's getting wistful.
There we go. We played it.
I'll play anything.
We've played it all.
One song we haven't played live yet that really bothers me is that we never got to play Candidate because the whole 2020 we were going to be playing Candidate for obvious reasons, and that's one of my favorite Bad Religion songs, and of course it's so apt and appropriate. So I look forward to playing that in the future. But
We'll
that's
bust it
what
out in four more years. It's going to be there. We'll still be there.
I wanted to hear you sing Faces of Grief, Brian. Come on.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how to play that. That was a one-off.
Okay, so on the same tip, Catherine Wall would like to know what's the craziest
No, Catherine.
performer that you've ever played with?
The craziest what?
Craziest performer or most intense performer? I'm not sure if this means on the stage or behind the scenes. We're not going to do that.
Chai Pig. What?
Yeah, he might have been.
Chai Pig.
He may have been one of the craziest.
Let's not forget Jello. We've spent some time with Jello.
Always make room for Jello.
Oh, you always do. You save room. Save room for him. And the whole School of Medicine, everyone's good. They can.
And don't forget, Bad Religion has played with Bad Brains. Don't forget that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay.
What about Roger Rogerson at the USC party?
Jay, why don't you tell that story?
There's basically lunatics everywhere you look. So I mean,
And a lot of them are drawn to punk. It's just how it is.
I'm just glad they didn't point to me when they said because they were thinking it.
What is wrong with you people?
Okay, so Nicholas Carbone, I'm going to paraphrase the question, but he's
Carbone.
talking about when you guys decide to call it quits.
I'm Frank
Do you,
Severo.
do you have a plan for that? Do you imagine it'll be a gradual process?
I'm living it right now. I'm living in that process right now.
Yeah. Well, first, what we did to speed the end up was that we went to Wuhan, and I was purchasing some perfume, special perfume that was made for me. No, I'm never stopping doing this. I'm unqualified for anything else.
Never stop stopping, Brian.
No. And, there's also the, it's fun that we're in kind of unknown territory here because we've been a band for 40 years. And I don't really, why not see how this all ends? It's supposed to be a good time also. This isn't, it's not like a job. This is a creative expression. And I want to keep doing that as long as I can. That's fun for me and hopefully for the other guys. That's all I'm going to say.
Brett, you as someone who sits behind the keyboards, you produce a lot of bands and things. Do you consider how long continuing doing that for as long as you can?
Did you say Brett or Greg?
He said Brett.
I don't produce a lot anymore. I pretty much produce some of my old friends' bands. Like whenever Rancid does a record, I'm sort of the fifth member of Rancid, and I always produce. And when my band does a record, I produce. So yeah, I don't need to ever quit that because I don't do a lot of it. But I love I love my limited involvement with the band. As long as they want to keep going and as long as they'll have me, I want to keep doing it because, I consider it a privilege to be able to write music and demo and record and present them with songs and go in the studio with my old friends. These guys are the oldest friends I have in life. I've been friends with them since I was 17 and they were 16 and 15. And so, I don't see any reason to stop. I'm definitely not going to stop before the fucking Rolling Stones stop.
Thank you.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I think that is a fantastic place to leave off this evening. Thank you all for being here tonight and for making 40 years of great music. Thank you for telling your stories and sharing them with me and Do What You Want, which is available, right now. You can have it delivered right to your doorstep. You don't have to leave your house because you can't leave your house.
I don't have one. Could you send me one?
Yeah, you can hit the green button and you can support
Really? So that's how it is.
indie
Okay.
bookstores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? Do What You Want 2 might be a different author, Jim.
So thank you all the fans for being here. Somehow it says there are 1,018 people here, but apparently it caps at 1,000. So there are a couple people who may have.
We're on the guest list. Stay away from them.
So thank you all for the fans. And hopefully in the very near future, we can all be listening to Bad Religion play in front of a live audience.
Yeah, and I want to personally thank all of you guys on behalf of the band. Your support means the world to us, and we feel terrible about the situation we're all in. But playing for you is among the most meaningful things that we do in our life, and we want to come back soon. And thank you all for being there. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, everybody.
Just a reminder for everyone, you can purchase the book at the green button when the live stream ends. This will be archived, so if you missed the beginning, in about 30 seconds to a minute, it's going to be posted, and then it will live in the archive after this. So please share it with friends. And thanks for supporting the band and for supporting Soup.
Bye, everyone.
The bandwidth.
Good seeing you, dudes. Bye, Greg. Bye, Brian.
Guys, I'll
Bye,
see you.
Dan. Bye,
Yeah.
Page. Bye, Fish Tank.
Bye, Fish Tank. Bye, Jim.
Bye, Jay.
Have a good day.